ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਕੀ ਕਦਮ ਚੁੱਕ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਹਨ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲੀਡਰਸ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਸਿਰਫ ਜਾਗਰੂਕ ਹੋਣ ਸਿੱਖ ਸੰਘਰਸ਼ ਸਿੱਖ ਐਕਟਿਵਿਸਟ ਉੱਤੇ ਪੋਟੈਂਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਅਟੈਕਸ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਬਟ ਐਕਸ਼ਨ ਆਈਟਮਸ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਲਈ ਕੀ ਹੈਗੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੀ ਵਸਦੀ ਹੋਈ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਇਨਵੋਲਵ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ ਇਨ ਐਕਸ਼ਨ ਆਈਟਮਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਹਨ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਿਵਲ ਰਾਈਟਸ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਲੀਡਰ ਐਗਜ਼ੈਕਟਿਵ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਰ ਕਿਰਨ ਕੌਰ ਗਿੱਲ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਕਿਰਨ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ
ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਸ਼ਮਿਤਾ Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you back on the program, Kiran. SALDEF, Sikh American Legal Defense and Education Fund, ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ lead ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ and ਅਸੀਂ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ SALDEF ਦੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ team members ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜੋੜਦੇ ਹਾਂ because ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਹੈਗੀ community ਲਈ civil rights ਲਈ and ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ emerging urgent issues ਉੱਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ highlight ਜਿੰਨਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰੀਏ ਉਨਾ ਘੱਟ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ but ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਜੋ ਸਾਡਾ topic ਹੈਗਾ Kiran, this is something that has brought the Sikh struggle on the mainstream stage. I mean, every major outlet has been reporting on the assassination attempts against Sikh activists, some of which were successful, like against Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada. And SALDEF bhi kithe bhi piche nahi reha in issues nu tackle karan de vich. Sab to pehle ta I want to start with what work the organization is doing. You're specifically in DC, you're walking these halls of power and having, really important conversations. When this whole story came about, specifically the indictment against Nikhil Gupta and his murder for hire scheme against leader of Sikhs for Justice, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, what kind of wheels started turning internally at SALDEF and how did you guys act on that within DC?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ashmita. And yes, you're right. We are headquartered in DC, and we have relationships with Congress, with the White House. I chair the Faith-Based Security Advisory Council for the Department of Homeland Security. We work closely with the FBI. So the first thing that we did was talk to all of our partners and express the urgent need to not only aggressively investigate these incidents, but also to ensure that our community is safe, and safeguarding our community is a priority for the administration as well as Congress. So we have been pushing the administration on that. We've been pushing the administration to make stronger statements. And we've also been, as you mentioned, the Transnational Repression Act. There is legislation that has been introduced that could help interagency coordination around transnational repression and help better define transnational repression, because this is an emerging issue and it's certainly an urgent one for our community.
Kiran, SALDEF has been fantastic about communicating with the Sangat, with the diaspora on some of these action items that you guys are specifically taking, not just to address this, amongst the chain of command within, the United States law enforcement and intelligence agencies, but you're doing a lot of cross organization collaboration here. I want to go back to this one slide that shows a letter. This letter specifically was signed by SALDEF in addition to other organizations. Deepak ji, if you could just go back and show the letter again. This letter specifically brings to light the alarming kind of, actions that are being taken by a foreign government. Can you tell me a little bit about this letter?
The letter on your screen, I'm trying to see, this was the letter that we signed with Hindus for Human Rights.
Yes.
Yes. And we have been working across organizations, across communities, because this is an issue that a lot of diasporic Indian communities face. And I think the significance of this letter is not only calling to light the need to investigate and obviously strongly condemn the actions that we've seen in terms of the recent indictment and the assassination attempts, transnational repression actions of the Indian state, but to show that this is, a broad pattern across different communities. And I think that, again, when we're stronger, we're certainly stronger when we talk about how this issue affects different communities. the Sikh community obviously being front and center given the recent indictment and the recent successful attempt at assassination in Canada. So I think the significance of this letter is that there are more voices at the table, and the more that we push, the better reception will be, because we know that for the United States, India has been a strategic partner, and this is something that, looking at human rights and making sure that human rights and the rights of American citizens, or the rights of citizens in the diaspora, is prioritized above, other strategic considerations, because that is extremely important. Safeguarding American citizens should be a fundamental duty of our government and a fundamental priority.
Kiran, I have to ask, because from the feedback that we're getting from the community, there's a lot of paranoia, there's a lot of fear after some of these public disclosures, and the way mainstream media has reported it, that the FBI has, been cognizant of essentially a hit list of prominent Sikh activists. Now, SALDEF, routinely when we engage with your organization, we talk about Sikh American issues, right? Sikh identity, Sikh history in schools, defending the rights of Sikh Americans in the United States. What kind of steps, are you taking, or what kind of conversations are you having, behind the scenes that you can potentially share with us today that go beyond what is the traditional scope of SALDEF, so this issue is addressed, in addition to all of the other amazing work that you're doing?
Well, a couple things. One, we are certainly working very closely with the FBI and DHS around making sure that this issue is prioritized in both the agencies, that it gets the attention it needs. I know recently Director Ray met with Indian intelligence, and we did have a meeting subsequent to that with the FBI about the nature of that meeting and the importance of ensuring that activists in the U.S. are safe, and that obviously, trusting a foreign partner that's been alleged of these actions, need to move very cautiously. I've been speaking to the Secretary of Homeland Security. Transnational repression will be a main focus of the Faith-Based Security Advisory Council next year. So that will be another avenue that we can push legislation and make sure that the FBI and DHS are working in coordination. They have created resources both in English and Punjabi, which are available on our website, about what to do if you are a victim of transnational repression. So we will share those, and it's certainly important for our community to understand. Mm-hmm. But in addition, congressionally and in the White House, we've also done a lot to educate the administration and members of Congress about this issue. As you mentioned earlier, this is an issue that I think for many in the broader American society recently came to light, and there's a lot of historical context, there's a lot of political context. For individuals that are unfamiliar with the history of the Sikh community in India and history of other diasporic communities in India, to understand and to be able to see the signs of transnational repression so we can be more preventative. SALDEF has done a lot of work, as you know, in censorship, looking at censorship of our community online, disinformation. And to us, it's all part of this broader spectrum of silencing dissenting voices, right? We see the overlap in the transition from the censorship, from the types of speech that are not permitted, or the narratives that are shared, to who they're targeting, and actually seeing physical violence now. And assassinations. And what we're trying to do is fill in the dots for members of Congress and the administration, and ensure that there are legislative solutions, policy and legal solutions so we can push back.
Kiran, you mentioned this education portion, right? And this is so core to even your organization's mission. I mean, it's literally part of your name, right? The Sikh American Legal Defense and Education Fund. I have to call attention to some of the work that you've been doing personally in this regard. So many mainstream media articles, publications have covered this issue now in the weeks past. And in so many of them, you're quoted, as giving various statements on this. Just on a side note, in addition to all of the policy work that's taking place in DC, in government, can you give us a little bit of a comment on, when these mainstream media organizations, whether it's the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, WAPO, BBC, the Intercept, the Guardian, when these folks reach out to organizations like SALDEF, and you get to give a statement to them, overall, how does that benefit the Sikh community, the diaspora struggle, in a larger sense?
So I think it's extremely important for these outlets to hear directly from community members and community organizations, because we know that there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation and coordinated narratives about our community, specifically the diaspora. So I think, whenever we have the opportunity, we certainly do speak out from a community perspective about what's happening, and also, again, to fill in some of that history. Our media team has also recently created a fact sheet for different media outlets, because we have seen a lot of, narratives that have not come from the community. And I think in some cases it can be harmful. Mm-hmm. It's important for the media, as well as I mentioned, the White House, members of Congress, to understand what this means for community, mm-hmm. and how important it is to ensure that all of our community is safeguarded. And we know, as I know we've talked before, there are others that have been informed that they could be targeted. So this recent indictment, the plot was foiled, but that's not to say that there could be other issues, mm-hmm. there could be other acts of transnational repression. So this is an ongoing issue for our community. Mm-hmm. This is something that we see, very strictly as issues of the Indian state not respecting the sovereignty of other countries, not respecting the rights of American citizens, of Canadian citizens. So I think in order for the framing to be correct and for there not to be the disinformation and misinformation that is so prevalent on so many different outlets, we really have to make sure that our voices of community organizations like SALDEF, as well as community members, are centered as this is reported on in the mainstream media.
And once again, you specifically, SALDEF in particular, is doing such a fantastic job in this regard. Every time I see one of these quotes, I feel proud that, like you said, our community gets to tell its story. We get to be the fact bearers, in these major outlets. So we've been showing our viewers on the screen an image as well as the SALDEF website. This is specifically the action item that we have for viewers watching today. If somebody, agar ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ transnational Repression Policy Act ਦਾ ਇਹ ਦਰਜਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਇਹਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ elected officials ਨੂੰ appeal ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤੁਸੀਂ SALDEF ਦੀ website ਤੇ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ. Kiran, can you just walk us through what this form fill is and how it kind of does all the hard work for the viewers in case they want to reach out directly to their elected officials, no matter where they live in the United States?
Absolutely, yeah. So you're right, this form, we've tried to make it as easy for everyone as possible. It will fill out and it will get sent directly to the White House. As mentioned, it's an extremely important for the administration, for Congress to hear directly from the community so they can understand that this is not just, a one-time thing. This is something that the community is facing. It's something that the community is deeply concerned about, and we want to see action. We want to see action. We want to see strong language by the administration. We want to see policy solutions. And so this is a template. Again, it auto-populates, so you can just go. You can send the letter directly. It will outline the ask that we have of the administration, a lot of which we've talked about here in terms of the Transnational Repression Act and the statements from the administration. And it's extremely impactful. This is the way change happens. This is the way that policy is prioritized, is that they need to hear from community. They need to hear that this is how we're feeling and this is the actions that we want. And so I strongly encourage all of you to go to our website, which is www.saldef.org, and there is a link there for this letter, and highly encourage everyone in our community to fill this out and ensure their voices are heard.
Once again, ਤੁਸੀਂ SALDEF SALDEF.org ਤੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਆਪ ਦੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ, ਕੰਟੈਕਟ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ, ਐਡਰੈਸ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਇਸ ਚਿੱਠੀ ਨੂੰ ਆਟੋਮੈਟਿਕਲੀ elected officials तक पहुँचा सकते हो, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਗਵਾਈ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਸਿਰਫ ਇਸ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਦੀ ਬਟ ਸਿੱਖ ਮਸਲਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ. Once again, Kiran Kaur Gill, Executive Director at SALDEF, the Sikh American Legal Defense and Education Fund. Kiran, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program, and it's so good to see you taking some time out for us. We know you're so busy talking to all the mainstream media, but once again, we're so proud of the work that this organization is doing, that you're doing in the leadership position. Please keep us informed with all of the updates that take place in Washington, D.C. We know you guys are working very hard on all of our behalf. ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ break ਲੈਣ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਆ ਗਿਆ. Kiran, any closing words for the community? Any words of advice or ਕੋਈ ਹੌਸਲਾ ਬੁਲੰਦ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲੀ closing messages?
I would just say that, I know it's a very difficult time for our community, but our community has always been strong, and particularly in the face of adversity, and now is the time to raise your voice. Yes. So again, I would urge everyone to fill out the letter, send it to the White House, reach out to your Congress members. We do have things that we can do. Absolutely. And to combat transnational repression. Absolutely. And you're not alone.
Absolutely. There's a long fancy word for it now, but we know in the community what it means. And sirf galna de naal hun kam nahi sarna, we all have to act. So once again, SALDEF ਦੀ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਤੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਚਿੱਠੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਪਾ ਕੇ